in a move that has stunned diplomats and analysts around the world, as President Donald Trump is reportedly planning to travel to the Islamic Republic of Iran to lead direct talks with his Iranian counterpart. The Observer reported this development on April 14th, citing sources close to the White House. According to these sources, if Trump does indeed lead direct negotiations with Iranian leadership, it could mark the next critical step toward a peace deal between the two nations. For decades, no American president has set foot on Iranian soil. The very idea would have been unthinkable just months ago. But war changes everything, and the 40-day conflict between the United States and Iran has created circumstances that no one could have predicted. Analysts believe that as Iranian relations are being deeply strained, but also, paradoxically, reshaped, the old rules no longer apply. The old hatreds, while still present, are being set aside temporarily, at least in the search for an exit from the bloodshed. Even as warships gather in the Gulf of Oman and the Strait of Hormuz remains blockaded, diplomatic channels remain open. According to the Associated Press, Iran and the United States are holding diplomatic talks to seek a second round of negotiations. The first round, held last month in the Islamic Republic of Iran, failed to produce an agreement. The two sides talked for hours. They raised their demands. They stared across tables. But they did not give up, as officials have confirmed that talks could take place again. The deadline for a second round could be as soon as this weekend or later this month. Neither side is willing to wait until the end of the year. The situation is too urgent. The war is too costly. The ceasefire is too fragile. Vice President Joe Biden has signaled that progress has been made even if the weekend talks fail to produce a concrete agreement. In an interview with a Hong Kong television network, Biden confirmed that the ball is now in Iran's court. The United States has made its position clear. The conditions have been laid out. Now, Iran must decide whether it wants to continue the path of war or take the first steps toward peace. The negotiations over the past weekend between Saturday and Sunday lasted 21 hours. 21 hours of tension. 21 hours of raised voices and hardened positions. No agreement was reached. Biden described the truth of the situation with characteristic bluntness. The tension in the first-person negotiations has been high since the beginning, he said. But both sides are still trying to find common ground. Neither has walked away. Neither has given up hope. The Prime Minister of Pakistan has emerged as a key mediator in the conflict. Pakistan shares a border with Iran. It has historical ties both to Iran and Washington, and it has a powerful interest in seeing the Middle East stabilized. The Pakistani Prime Minister is trying to bring the two sides together again. He wants to reduce the level of tension between the United States and Iran. He has stressed that Pakistan is willing to play this role for as long as necessary to ensure that the Middle East can finally know true peace. The Prime Minister expressed optimism that talks could be held in a timely manner. He believes that any possible agreement between the two sides is within reach if both sides are willing to compromise. Israeli media outlets have also weighed in on the potential for renewed talks. According to these reports, the United States and Iran could return to the negotiating table this summer or late this summer. A proposal for a second round of talks has already been sent and exchanged between the two countries as of May 14th. The same sources, who are described as being familiar with the situation, said that the date of the talks is still pending. But most insiders believe that if the talks can be held in private away from the media, away from the pressure of public opinion, the two sides could meet again soon. The timeline is flexible. Iranian officials have indicated that they are willing to meet as soon as possible, even without waiting for the weekend. No specific date has been set, but the Iranian delegation still believes that talks could be held from Sunday to Sunday, if the schedule can be arranged. According to the same source, negotiators are prepared to travel to the Islamic Republic of Iran as early as Wednesday of this week. Talks could begin the following Sunday. The only condition is that the Assad agrees to meet with the Iranian side again. Here is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Sources in Iranian media have reported that President Trump is planning to attend the talks in person, not by video conference, not through a proxy, not through the vice president, in person, on Iranian soil. face to face with the country's leadership. Why would the President of the United States take such a risk? The answer, according to analysts, is simple. Trump wants to determine a quick agreement. He does not trust lower-level negotiators to close the deal. He believes that only he with his unique combination of pressure and persuasion can break the deadlock. But observers warn that Trump's personal involvement carries significant risks. If he leads the meeting, he could put enormous pressure on the Iranian side. He could also offer significant benefits: sanctions relief, military withdrawal, economic incentives. The question is whether Iran will accept those terms. A senior Iranian official has confirmed that both sides have responded positively to the idea of negotiating together again. The first round of negotiations was led by Vice President Yavlin, preserved as given for the US side, and by the Speaker of the Iranian People's Assembly for the Iranian side. That round failed. Now, with Trump potentially stepping into the room, everything could change or everything could fall apart even more dramatically. To understand why the first round failed, one must understand the competing demands laid on the table. The United States presented a list of conditions. If Iran accepted them, the US agreed to ease or completely lift American sanctions on Iran. What were those conditions? First, Iran must completely reopen the Strait of Hormuz. No blockades, no hostage-taking, no demands for payment from passing ships. Second, Iran must dismantle its nuclear weapons program. Not freeze it, not pause it, dismantle it completely, and there must be no plans to produce any more warheads in the future. Third, Iran must stop supporting militants in the Middle East, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all of them. The funding must stop, the weapons must stop, the training must stop. These were America's conditions. To Iran, they were non-negotiable demands, an ultimatum dressed as a peace offer. Iran responded with its own list of conditions. First, the United States must pay for all damages caused by US military strikes on Iran. The bombing has destroyed cities, bridges, power plants, and oil refineries. Iran wants compensation. Second, the United States must cut economic sanctions completely and return all Iranian foreign assets that have been frozen in American banks. Third, the United States must withdraw its troops from the Middle East. All of them. The troops currently deployed in the region in Iraq, in Syria, in Kuwait, in Bahrain, in Qatar must leave. These were Iran's conditions. To the United States, they were equally unacceptable. And so, after 21 hours, the two sides walked away with nothing. Despite expressing hope for a final peace agreement, President Trump has not eased his military pressure on Iran. On the contrary, even as diplomatic channels remain open, Trump has announced the closure of the Gulf of Oman. He has announced the deployment of a naval mine-clearing ship to the Persian Gulf. He has expanded the US naval presence in the region. The deployment of US warships to the Gulf of Oman, which the United States considers to be disputed waters, is a clear signal. The United States is prepared to use force if diplomacy fails. Trump has stated that he will send minesweeping ships to destroy Iranian sea mines for the safety of navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. The mines, he claims, are a direct threat to international shipping. They must be cleared. But the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, which many analysts consider more powerful than the government of the Islamic Republic itself, has issued its own warnings. The Revolutionary Guard is afraid, but not too afraid to fight. They fear that Iran will retaliate against US military bases in the Middle East. They fear that any US position in the region could become a target. And they have warned that if the United States continues to attack the Gulf of Oman, Iran will also strike the ports of other countries along the Gulf Coast. This is not an empty threat. Iran has the missiles to make it happen, and the Revolutionary Guard has the willingness to use them. Trump has responded with characteristic bluntness. If Iran dares to shoot down US warships, he said, the United States will push back. Iran will be made to fall into the most dangerous hell. His message to Tehran is simple. Open the strait. Stop seizing money from ships passing through the waters. Do not demand bribes. Follow international law. Arab countries have also weighed in. Several Arab nations have declared that they will not accept the Iranian Revolution's demands for payment of bribes when their ships pass through the strait. They want to know, does Iran need a bribe, or does it need to comply with international law? The Arab position has been coordinated with the United States. Together, they have taken the case of the Strait of Hormuz to the United Nations Security Council. The United Nations Security Council met last week to find a resolution against Iran. The goal was to pass a resolution condemning Iran's closure of the strait and demanding its immediate reopening. The draft resolution was prepared by France and supported by the United Kingdom and several other nations. But the resolution could not pass. Why? Because China and Russia, both permanent members of the Security Council with veto power, blocked it. China and Russia consider the Strait of Hormuz to be a matter of Iranian sovereignty. They argue that Iran has the right to control its own waters, and they are not willing to support a resolution that could lead to further military escalation. The veto left the United States and its allies frustrated. More than 40 countries have been looking for ways to counter Iran's actions, not necessarily through military force, but through legal measures and additional sanctions. For now, those efforts have been blocked. Where does this leave the situation? The diplomatic path is still open. Trump is reportedly planning to travel to Iran. The second round of talks could happen as soon as this week. Pakistan is mediating. Messages are being exchanged. But the military path is also open. 15 to 20 US warships surround the strait. Minesweepers are being deployed. The Revolutionary Guard is threatening retaliation. The ceasefire holds for now, but it is fragile, and every day that passes without a diplomatic breakthrough brings the region closer to a new outbreak of violence. The ball, as Vice President Biden said, is in Iran's court. But the clock is ticking. If Donald Trump does indeed travel to Iran, it will be the most audacious diplomatic gamble of his presidency. He will be walking into enemy territory. He will be facing leaders who have called for America's destruction. He will be negotiating under the shadow of warships and missiles. But he will also be offering something that no American president has ever offered before: a direct handshake with the Islamic Republic, a chance for peace, a way out of the bloodshed. Whether Iran will accept that hand or whether it will be rejected remains to be seen. The world is watching, the world is waiting, and the Strait of Hormuz remains the most dangerous place on earth.